I'm attempting to complete every single GameCube game, and I'm using a random number generator to pick the next game. Last episode, we fought through the streets of New York and played Def Jam Fight for New York. And in this episode, we're going back to the arcade days and are playing Namco Museum 50th Anniversary. Namco Museum 50th Anniversary was released on August 30th, 2005, and was developed by Digital Eclipse and published by Namco. This game has some fun arcade games and some that I would never want to play again. Before we get started, make sure to like this video because it helps out the channel, and subscribe if you're new so you don't miss any of the future games. Without further ado, this is my experience with Namco Museum 50th Anniversary. In Namco Museum 50th Anniversary, we're going to go through every game in the collection and set a high score to consider this one complete. These games in the collection are very simple, so I'm going to talk about our objective in each one and what the high score is, and then we can move on to the next game. If you don't know what Namco games are, they're the games that people would play on the old arcade cabinets at an arcade or a restaurant, something that doesn't really exist anymore outside of barcades. These games tend to be quick to play and simple to understand. Usually just one objective to do, and then you can move on to a harder level doing the same thing. The Namco Museum has a total of 16 arcade games, and we're going to go through 15 of them because one requires us to unlock it, but it's the same game as one that we had already played in the collection, just a different version of it. Alright, I think that covers what we're going to do in the video, so let's move into the games. We're going to start with the most iconic arcade game known as Pac-Man. I don't think I need to explain this one, but we'll go over it quickly. We control Pac-Man and we navigate ourselves around a maze to collect pellets to complete the level. There are ghosts that come out of the middle of the maze, and if we touch them, then we die. We can counter this and get a lot of points by collecting the larger pellets that are in the corner of the level. 4 in each level, I believe. I don't know if they change later, though. This makes the ghosts flash blue, and then we can eat them. The more ghosts that we eat during a large pellet, the more points we can collect. The objective of the game, besides getting the highest score possible, is to collect all of the pellets in the maze to move to the next level. Every once in a while, a fruit will appear in the maze, and we can collect it to gain some extra points. This game doesn't have a high score, but when I looked it up, the average Pac-Man score is about 15,000 points. So that's the score I have to be to consider this one complete. It took me a couple tries to get the points needed because I want to just collect the pellets, but eating the ghosts is the easiest way to get this score. I finished with the high score of 15,260 points, and we can move on to the next game in the collection. The next game we're going to complete is called Pole Position. In this game, we have to race an F1 car on a track and earn points based on how fast we complete the lap and how well we drive the car. There is a time limit we have to complete the race in, and if we do, we can move on to the next race until we run out of time. This game is very simple, and the high score we need for this one is 12,000 points. This took me way longer than expected because I didn't know that you could change from low gear to high gear on my first handful of attempts. I was driving decent in those attempts, but I just wasn't going fast enough to get to the end of the level. Once I figured this out, I could then finish this game with no issue at all, and I got a score of 12,550. This allowed for us to move on to Pole Position 2. This game is pretty much the same as the previous game, but we can pick between different courses in this version. In Pole Position 2, we have to get a high score of 17,600, which I was able to do basically on my first try. Another thing I want to point out in this version is there are water puddles on the course that will cause you to spin out and wreck. So we just have to avoid them while racing. There are other racers on the course in both games, and if we hit them, both the car we hit and ourselves will blow up in a fiery explosion, and I assume that we die. But in this game, we just respawn and we can continue on with our race. I was able to finish this game with a score of 20,190 points. This is our best score yet. The next game is called Rally X. In this game, we control another sprint car, and we have to drive around an area that is basically a maze and collect these flags. Once we collect all of them, we can move to the next level. There are other cars that are chasing us, and if we run into them, we will die and lose a life. Our only defense to these cars is that we can leave clouds of smoke to cause them to spin out. but these cloud of smoke that we leave behind us uses fuel, so we have to be careful that we don't run out. If we do run out of fuel, then we end up losing. The high score we need in this game is 20,000 points, which will also give us an extra life. I was able to achieve this high score on my first attempt at this game, so that was nice, and we finished it with a score of 28,690 points, which was way more than we needed, but it felt really good to finally be decent at one of these games, and we can move on to the next one. Next up is a game called Rolling Thunder. I thought this would be another racing game, but it is not that at all. We control this man in a red shirt and red shoes, and we have to go left to right taking out enemies that look like bank robbers or bad superheroes. We get points by killing them, and we can jump to avoid their shots. We can also take doors to get more ammo for our gun, or we can even take doors to get to the top floor to avoid the enemies on the lower floor. We do have a life meter at the bottom of the screen, but taking one shot will cause half of it to go away, so 2 shots will end up killing us. This game does one nice thing though, and if we do get a game over, then we can continue with the same score, so setting the high score was no problem at all. I will say that this game was way more challenging than I thought it would be, and I never even made it past the first level of the game. So if you know more about this game, then let me know down in the comments below. Our high score we had to get in this game was 30,000, which I mentioned wasn't hard because we could just take our score over from the previous attempt. So we ended up finishing this game with a high score of 44,100 points, killing the goal, but I wasn't really happy about it. This was a struggle for me, but it wasn't the worst game in the collection. The next game up in the collection is Sky Kid, another game I had never heard of before. The objective of this game is to fly our little plane from the takeoff area to the other side of the area and drop a bomb onto the target enemy. This seems way easier than it looks. There are tanks and other planes trying to take us down as we go to collect the bomb and then fly over to the enemy target. This game took me forever to get the high score, and I even had to take a break from it and come back later to get it. The high score we needed in this game was 30,000 points, which doesn't seem like a lot, but if you don't get the target enemy, then our score does not go up very quickly. We finally got a run where we were able to finish the game with a score of 33,150. So we're finally done with this one. It couldn't have come any sooner. Next up is Galaga. Do I even need to explain this one? We control a spaceship and we have to move back and forth from left to right to avoid the enemies shooting and diving down on us as we try to shoot them and take them all out. They come down in a formation and will slowly descend on us, making it harder to avoid the shots. The high score we need in this one is 20,000 points. I've played this before, so this only took me a couple of tries to beat the score, with our score of 20,010. We barely got it, but I'm totally counting it. On to the next one. Exodus is up next, and in this game we have to fly a stealth fighter and destroy enemies that fly down at us. And some of the enemies are down on the ground, and we kind of have to drop bombs on them in a top-down level section. Once we get so far, there are bosses that will try to take us out. This game has a high score of 40,000 points, and this game took forever to get the high score in. It's pretty slow moving, which is part of the problem, but I also found it really hard to take out the first boss. We're super fragile and die from one hit, so we have to play perfect to even get to the boss, and then the boss shoots us with a bunch of missiles right at the beginning of the fight, and I could never figure out how to beat him. Good thing we had 3 lives and it sets you back a bit and we can rack up points, because if that wasn't the case, I don't think I could have beat this one. I did get a really good run to finally get the high score though, and ended with a score of 52,920, which sounds good, but I struggled with this one. Some of these games were brutal back in the day. Let's move on to the next game, Galaxian. Another game I wasn't familiar with, but plays a lot like Galaga. We have a ship that can shoot a missile very slowly, and we have to hit enemies as they fly down on the screen at us and do their dive attacks. This game was not fun, and it didn't have a high score, so I just wanted to get to 2,000 points, which I was able to do with a score of 2,100. If I was a kid in the arcade, I would never pick this game to use my quarters on. I hope this game was in the back corner collecting dust, to be honest. The next game we're going to attempt is a game called Bosconian. Another game I remember playing as a kid. This game has us controlling a spaceship and we can fly around space shooting small ships and asteroids. The objective is to take out all the motherships in the level to move to the next one. This game isn't hard to get the high score, but I was having a blast playing it. It's such a simple game and the controls are done really well, so it's just fun to fly around and see how quickly we can take out the motherships. Some of the motherships will even line up in a row so we can take them out super fast. When taking out a mothership, we have to wait till the core of the ship opens, and then it takes just one shot to take it down. The high score in this game is 20,000, which is common for most of the games in this collection. On our first attempt, we got a score of 32,740 points, easily crushing the score and allowing us to move on to the next game. The next game is my personal favorite Namco game, and it's called Dig Dug. In Dig Dug, we control a Smurf that has to dig his way through the ground to find dragons and snorkelers. Then we shoot them with an air pump and cause them to explode. It is such a wild concept, but I absolutely love it. When we dig in the dirt, we get points, but to really get your points up, we need to take out the enemies. Once all the enemies are defeated or the last one runs out of the stage, we can move on to the next level. One fun way to take out the enemies is to have them all chase you, and then you cause a rock to drop on them that are just kind of in the dirt in random areas. The more enemies we crush with the rocks, the more points we get. I was able to get a combo where I got a bunch of them under one rock, and I got 6,000 points from it. It was crazy. The high score in this game is only 10,000, which is way too low, and on our first try, we were able to get a score of 24,780. More than doubling what we needed for the game. On to the next game in the collection. The next game is Miss Pac-Man. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time with this one because it's the same game as Pac-Man, but you have a bow and lipstick. I did take the time to get 20,000 points instead of just 15,000 so that we could unlock one of the secret games in the collection. So let's take a look at this one. This one is called Pac-Mania, and it's not much different from Pac-Man, besides it's 3D this time around. The high score is 100,000 points. This seems like a lot of points, but if you play on the hardest difficulty and beat the first level, it gives you over 100,000 points just for doing that. So the objective for me was just to complete the first level. This is much more challenging than Pac-Man because there are a lot more ghosts, but overall it only took a few tries to complete the level, get the points we needed to check off this game, and then we could move on. The reason I covered this game is because there is a game that we haven't talked about yet that I could not get the high score for, so I feel like I'm going to count this one instead of that one. So let's talk about that game. The game is called Dragon Spirit, and in this game we control a man that can turn into a dragon. Then we have to go top down and take out enemies that walk, jump, and fly at us to get points. There are power-ups along the way that will allow for us to shoot with 2 dragon heads and stuff along those lines, but it doesn't really help. Here's the problem with the game. The score goes up way too slow to get the 80,000 points you need to beat the high score. I watched someone play this game with like the perfect run, and they didn't even get much more of a score beating the game. So there was no way I was going to be able to do it. If you want to consider this not completing a game, then that's fine, but for me, I'm counting Pac-Mania as this game instead. I tried so many times to beat this game, and the closest I ever got was 37,000 points. It's so difficult, but it's actually a lot of fun. This is a real mixed feeling kind of game for me. Alright, my rant is over now. Let's move on to the last game in the collection. This game is called Mappy. In this game, we control a mouse that is running from a bunch of cats in a very large house. There are trampolines that we can jump on that will allow for us to change floor levels quickly, but if we jump on them too many times in a row, they'll break and then we'll die. To get points, we have to run around the house and collect household items. Once we collect them all, we finish the level and we can move on to the next one. There are doors that can trap us because we can only open them from the side that doesn't have a doorknob. So we kind of have to be strategic when changing floors. There are also flashing doors that will shoot a sonic wave that will take enemies away from us, and if they leave the screen, then we get points for taking them out. Between some levels, we get a bonus level that has us jumping on trampolines to collect balloons. The more balloons we collect, the more bonus points we get for the level. These helped out a lot with score and allowed for us to get points without losing a life if we fall and died. We needed a high score of 20,000 to complete this one, and honestly, it wasn't that bad. It probably took me 7 or 8 tries to get it, but I was having fun playing it, so it didn't really matter to me. We ended up with a score of 26,860, which I was happy with. And that's it for the Namco Museum. We completed the game. Would I recommend this game? This is a difficult one for me. I think I would recommend this one because there are some really fun games from the past, but there's also some games that are either very difficult or just boring. I wouldn't really want to play those ones again, so it's a recommend for me, but not wholeheartedly. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below though. If you want to know what's next, stick around, but if not, thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe, like, and share this video, and we'll see you in the next one. Yep, we got our random number generator up at 519. We got our GameCube game list up, and on the count of 3, we're going to find out what we're playing next. So 3, 2, 1. Hit that generate button. It's number 66, which is 66. Chaos Field. I have no idea what that is.